the famous picture is always some little kid sitting at the bottom of it, and this thing is, I don't know, 30 feet high or something like that.
It's called the Monio Giant or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, Monio Giant, and it's a big honking rock. I don't know how deep into the ground it goes either.
Well, it's got to be a long way down.
Yeah, it's got to be going. That. Yeah, it's got to be going down at least 10 feet.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, to not fall over. So somebody had to dig a hole. That'd be brutal work.
Yeah.
Somebody had to dig a hole, and then while the other guys, okay, man, well, you dig the hole, we're gonna go get the rock.
So, okay, since I'm the question asker of this,
okay.
I guess my question right now, when we're talking about description of it, is what keeps these rocks from just being like rocks, right? Like, are they just normal rocks? They're just like, you found them anywhere? Or are there any kind of like stone masonry marks or anything like that?
Yeah, they definitely found marks. I mean, marks of stone masonry. Definitely, they found like they split the granite by drilling holes in it. God knows how they did that. I imagine they took a stick and just sort of rubbed it around, like spun it around like about 5 million times, and then managed to bore a hole in there, and then get in there with wedges and split the rock. But apparently these people did know how to work stone. They knew how to break it.
Well, and we didn't figure out how to make iron. We didn't know how to make iron at that time. So I think the best tools we had besides other stones was maybe brass.
I don't know.
I don't even know if we knew how to use brass at that time, but brass is super soft. It's the worst tool in the world to work on a rock with.
Not going to be much use. Yeah.
And really, granite is like a really hard rock. So, and like a stick isn't really gonna. So, I guess that's a question.
Yeah, I mean, because I've seen pictures of some of these rocks, and they've bored holes in the rocks in a line to aid in breaking these things. And God knows how they did that. I don't know. I mean, it's maybe these people actually succeeded in creating steel. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess we've talked about some stories where there's some evidence that maybe man knew how to work metal before we gave him credit for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, entirely possible.
Totally possible.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one of the things I'll say about these is even though there's evidence of stonework, they left a lot of just natural part of the rocks. I mean, they didn't totally shape these rocks into like a perfect rectangle or anything like that.
No,
they look like long rocks, basically. In most cases, some of them are pointed, some of them are flat.
Well, and I think that I swear that I saw something, and tell me if you heard this or if I'm just making this up, Joe. But in these long swaths of all these pillars of rock, I swear I saw somewhere where not only were they in basically perfect rows, but they were level with each other. So, was it level, or were they staring down?
They descend from one end to the other in height. So essentially, the stones they decreased from one end in height to the other end, and also side to side.
Oh, so the left side is the tallest, and then they get shorter as they go? Is that what I'm to understand?
Yeah, and so, but when you actually look at the pictures of them on the ground, it's kind of hard to see that pattern. But again, part of this is because they're on rolling ground, so it's like so you'd have to like go out and measure the rocks to really see. My own personal theory is that what happened is they started out small, and then the first rocks were the shortest ones, and those were the ones that they actually were capable of moving. And then as time went by, they figured out more effective ways to move rocks, and so they started moving bigger rocks, and then. Somebody else had another bright idea, and they were able to tackle even bigger rocks. And so, by the time they wrapped it all up, they're putting up rocks that are like 15 feet high.
See, now if it was me, it would be the exact opposite. I would overestimate how much work I could do. So they would start out really cool and tall, and as I started working along, I'd start getting lazier and lazier, and they would get shorter and shorter because I didn't want to do so much work.
Well, this debunks one of the theories that I was tossing around talking about initially, was that I thought maybe they were just gravestones. I think I read somewhere that they might have just been gravestones, but I think that it's suspicious that there would be such a solid downgrade or down plane. That if they were just gravestones, they would be like whatever size. They wouldn't be like, well, all the big ones are over here and all the little ones are over here. That
makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking they started at one end, and then it's possible that they realized that they're running a little short on rock. Maybe their quarry was like, not infinite, and they realized that their quarry stone was not an infinite supply, so they started putting up smaller ones. That's a possibility.
I guess, yeah, but I guess.
But if it was a graveyard, and say they started at one end, then they would have been like modest sized rocks, and then when some big mucky muck dies, and he would have gotten a really big rock,
right.
And then after that they go back to small ones.
But the gravestones are one of the theories. And again, I believe there was somebody had said that because it's X number of stones, that there were X number of tribes.
Yeah.
And so every time the leader of that tribe died, they would put up a new stone. And so everybody came together as leaders died and continually put more and more up, not necessarily as a headstone, but a marker for that person. So they
would get bigger and bigger like the pyramids did.
Right, because they I'm better than them, so when I die, sons, make sure you give me a bigger rock than Bill over there.
The theory we're talking about, this is a guy named Manuel Vega who wrote this theory that it was a necropolis for the leaders of supposedly 10 confederated tribes, Neolithic tribes. And there's no real basis for this. Nice theory and everything, but, so basically he takes the fact that there are 10 rows to mean, well, there must have been 10 tribes, and just goes from there. So it's entirely possible, but I don't know.
Yeah, since this is prehistoric, right, that you can kind of just say, well, there were this many tribes, and they were totally all together. It's very easy to just
just kind of make it up as you go along.
In my story world, this is how this went.
Yeah, actually this gives me an idea, though. Supposedly there were 10 tribes, and so supposedly they all felt the need to make an offering to the gods every year, like once a growing season. So each tribe came out to the spot and put up a big ass stone, and they kept trying to outdo each other, which is why the stones kept growing in size.
Yeah.
So wait, okay, so are there 10 different sites, and each tribe had a site, or
apparently they had a common site.
But how many sites are there? Oh, we're talking about like if this whole thing was like one
single thing, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But we don't know. See, that's the hard part, is we don't know if they were supposed to be connected or if it was just this group did theirs over here. Nobody knows. It's kind of made up as you go along.
Sure.
It might have been that they left open spots because they knew that in the 20th century somebody would want to put a road through there.
Yeah.
So
they were time travelers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
So we don't know if they spoke French. We don't. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So here, let me run down a real quick list of the theories for what they were. One is that they were pathways between temples, giant temples, which have since disappeared.
That's weird to me.
Because where did the temples go?
It seems like a lot of work. Like I know that prehistoric people, like the societies of the past, and I guess to be fair, modern societies too, put a lot of stock in their religious whatever, but you would think they would put more work into their places of worship. Usually, right?
Than the road leading up to it.
Yeah. I actually have an idea on that, which is if you think about a culture that is based 4,500 years before the birth of Christ.
Yeah.
And somehow they know how to make stone. Well, they may be one of those cultures that is very connected to nature, is the way I'm trying to say it. Almost
Druidic.
What's that?
Druidic.
Something like that, yes. Or, the same way that the American Indians viewed it. And so their place of worship may not have been a construct as much as an open space of nature to look at the stars and all of that.
Oh, or like maybe it was like a labyrinth. This is a thing of Native American cultures, how you kind of celebrate is you have this labyrinth that you build out of stones, and how one of the ways you find this like inner peace is you go out to the forest where your labyrinth is and you walk your labyrinth a couple times, and that's how you like celebrate your spirituality. So I guess that's possible that it is more about the journey than the destination, if you will.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I'm spitballing here, but I could just see that.
Everybody else is spitballing.
It's a path. So, all of our experts are spitballing. But the path just seems weird.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. Well, so anyway, another theory is that they are giant paperweights. I just made that one up.
The paperweights of God.
Paperweights of the God. There was one local legend that it was a legion of Roman soldiers who were turned to stone, alternatively by Merlin the magician or by God.
Merlin.
Yeah, one or the other. Because
I think I read in Mists of Avalon about that one.
Yeah, really? Yeah.
Points for anyone who knows that.
So yeah, I guess the really, really huge soldiers were out front, and the really tiny ones were in the back. The 2 foot tall ones were in the back. Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. So they were chasing Saint Cornelius, and so they got their comeuppance. Anyway, that's not really a scientific theory. That's
more of a local legend.
That's kind of an urban legend. Yeah.
Let's be fair here.
Some people have said that it possibly could be some sort of astronomical observatory, something on the lines of Stonehenge. And there's a lot of other ancient peoples back around this time that built all kinds of astronomically oriented structures.
And it was to predict things like eclipses and stuff along those lines, right?
To keep track of the seasons, and all that stuff. And possibly, I don't know how you would use this to predict an eclipse, but, I'm not an astronomer.
And you know what? I was just going to say, well, does it align with the stars in any way? And then I realized that, that long ago,
everything
the stars
shifted.
were different.
Yeah, they were. And so
okay. All right. So there's no way to prove that. Okay.
Yeah, there really isn't. The one weak spot I find in this theory, it's always possible. That seems to be one of the leading reasons people did that kind of thing back in the days. But you wouldn't think they would need so many rocks, just a handful of rocks would suffice.
Or smaller rocks.
Yeah, like Stonehenge. Yeah. If you were going to do a Stonehenge type of function, you don't need to have thousands and thousands of rocks to do it.
You just need a couple big ones. Alternately, there are other, ancient observatories around that are just thousands and thousands of small. A man could feasibly pick that up with his 2 arms rocks.
It could be the difference between feet and meters, though, in the way that they did their math. You never know. They had a different system.
So anyway, the astronomical observatory, it's like the jury is out on that one. And again, there's no predominant theory in this whole thing. Another one. This is one I consider to be kind of weak. Is that it was an ancient earthquake detector? Because
I saw this, and I'm sorry that doesn't hold water. Yeah, explain to me what this is supposed to be.
Yeah, so if you see if these things are out in a big field, if you see the rock. Then
I feel but you could feel it by then.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, the thing about it is so you got somebody hanging out there, keep an eye on the earthquake detector, and so he sees this. He sees this happening, so he heads off, or maybe he sends people off to all the different villages to warn of the impending earthquake, and of course, by the time they get there, the villages have been leveled by the earthquake. So,
when I read this theory, my initial thought was, like dominoes.
Yeah, there you go.
Right,
yeah.
the little one would knock over, it'd be the first, and they would just knock each other over, and then everybody would know there was an earthquake over there, and the dominoes fall faster than the earthquake should, but that's not possible
actually
either.
But you know what? That gives me an idea. Maybe that's why they started making them shorter, so they wouldn't knock each other over.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hey, we just had to put those things back up. Why don't we either space them a little further apart or make them shorter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one, this is one to create a geomagnetic field. This was on a website. This is, I think, a little silly. So this is I'm just going to read an excerpt from this. Okay. The people who built Karnak must have been highly knowledgeable of the Earth's energy fields. According to a concept known as the world grid theory, certain places on our planet contain higher magnetic forces than others. Yeah, I know. An interesting coincidence for all the megalithic structures we have around the Earth is they're placed at specific points that could be harnessing an ancient world energy grid. Anyway, let me skip a little bit here. Energy feels different there. The ancient stone monuments were built to harness that force and that potential to create a funnel-like vortex. And might the combination of geomagnetic properties and the unique shapes of the stones themselves have allowed ancient builders to actually manipulate gravity? If so, where did this knowledge come from?
Guys,
anti-gravity.
You know about the Oregon vortex, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the mystery spot. That's, an alignment of magnetic lines. I'm sorry, I can't. Yeah. I just learned about this recently. I've been a couple times, and the first time it was whatever. But no, this is apparently a predominant theory in the vortex theory community right now that there are just areas that are like that, and that they'll make people sick, and
Oh, there's all kinds of great theories.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because this also kicks into one of the theories, which is you were proffering at the beginning about we don't know what happened to the people who live there. And if I understand correctly, there's no evidence left behind of who they are or any remains. Is that right?
Yeah, and but apparently sea levels were a lot lower in those days, about 30 feet lower. So any villages, most of their villages would have been on the shoreline or near the shoreline, so they probably are underwater now. But there's still, you would think there'd be some structures up in the hills.
Well, I think that's something I read though, is that based on how long ago this was, I mean, we're talking anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark.
More than that, right? Because it was 3,000.
It would have been 5,000 to 7,000, something like that.
Yeah, so a long time ago. Well, the problem is that even bones don't last that long.
Yeah.
And so they break down, and there's no evidence in the barrows. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
A lot of those.
Or tumuli.
Yeah, they've gone into them, and there's stuff. But there's no body.
Well, the soil in the Brittany is really acidic, right?
Yeah.
So it'll eat away at bones.
Yep.
Yeah, and I suppose it would eat away at anything else too.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it would eat. So any tools, anything like that. Although you think that things like, say, if you had like arrowheads, spearheads, things like that, you would think that those things would have survived.
I guess the big question here is that like if they're using granite to build these big stones, they're probably using granite to build other things too in their society.
You would think.
Houses and whatever, and maybe they're underwater, but that they probably still existed somewhere, or
there might still be somewhere out in the woods. There might be some old ancient villages that are just totally covered over with moss and rocks and stuff like that.
They might be buried in the seabed because it's silt and everything like that covering up that stone. The tidal forces knocking them down. I mean, who knows?
And you need to remember too that the romantic attraction of ancient ruins is a fairly recent thing in human history. Up till a few hundred years ago, we basically dismantled all those things and built our own houses out of it. Nobody cared. So
it's very true.
Yeah, but it is interesting that these people came and went without a trace. Anyway, another theory besides this geomagnetic field, which aliens might use, people could use to manipulate gravity, or aliens could use as guidance systems for their spacecraft because they hadn't yet invented the sextant apparently, and so they needed to use these rocks to guide their sophisticated spacecraft. So another one is random geological occurrence, which these things were extruded from the Earth in perfect straight lines. And I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we've already disproved that, right?
Wait. Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand this. So when I was a kid, and I was playing with Play-Doh, there was the porcupine toy where you stuck the Play-Doh into it and you squeezed it, and the Play-Doh came out and made the little quills. And that's what this theory is saying: is that the Earth just extruded them up like it would through a colander or something.
Sounds legit.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not buying that one. I'm not buying that.
Yeah,
just making sure I understood what that was. Still not buying it.
No, and again, given the fact that there's markings indicating that these things were quarried and shaped, at least somewhat shaped. Yeah. What else? There's, of course, the alien angle. Somebody pointed out that one of the layouts is in a rectangle, which is a 3x4 rectangle, and that proportion is 3x4. I don't remember what the
3x4 by 5.
Yeah. Well, the 5 is the diagonal between any two corners of it.
Right, which is
that sounds like
Pythagorean.
Which is a perfect
it
Pythagorean triangle. Yeah.
Plus b squared equals c squared.
Exactly. Yeah, and so that could be just an incredible coincidence, or maybe they had actually figured out some things about geometry back in those days. And this is many years before Pythagoras lived.
A long time, thousands, a couple hundred years at least.
Although maybe you never know. Maybe he stole the idea from these guys.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So
and it's funny is that the alien thing and the perfect triangles and all the alignments. I did see something where somebody had said that they were basically aliens had told the ancient people how to align it all because that was the landing pad for their giant spaceship.
Okay, so that's a little silly, but I do want to say that there are a lot of reports, and if you listen to this show and you guys know me, I'm generally not an alien person. But I do think that there's a lot of historical maybe evidence for aliens visiting Earth. in ancient times. And, this is a thing that I think I'm just going to do a whole show about at some point. So everybody stay tuned for that.
Okay.
But I think that, I like Ancient Aliens a little bit for this. I don't think for, a landing pad so they could land, whatever, they could land anywhere probably, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that, there's some minuscule, marble of a idea, and the idea that, aliens visited ancient civilizations.
Well, you should see.
Just throw that out
You
there.
should see the documentary "Aliens versus Predator." Yeah, that's got.
Oh,
a lot
and there's
of
that other
interesting
documentary series called Stargate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm gonna all of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but the another variant on that is that you create a perfect 3x4 rectangle. And then the aliens tell them how to do it, and then they do it, and the aliens think, well, we left our calling card. Sooner or later, somebody's going to figure out that, hey, dumb primitive people couldn't have figured this out. Must be aliens. Mm-hmm. But of course, at that point, really, is it why? Are they just trying to tweak us? Because so what? I mean, you need to leave us like a walkie-talkie so we can actually get on the horn with you and talk to you.
Well, so okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's another little tidbit of my whole big theory is maybe they intended to come back.
Yeah, and maybe they will. You never know.
Is this that Jodie Foster movie, Contact?
No.
Is that what we're doing here now?
No, we're not doing that at all.
Let's move on from the aliens. I'm done with the aliens.
I like the aliens.
I'm done with the aliens.
No.
Let's move on. What else have you got, Joe?
You know what? I think we have gone over all of them. We're talking about the Road to the Temples, a necropolis, an astronomical observatory, earthquake detector, geomagnetic field to harness magic, energy, and defy gravity. Ancient aliens and random geological occurrence. This to the best of my knowledge, sums up all of the possible explanations. To me, the necropolis idea sounds the most compelling, although his whole theory about 10 confederated Neolithic tribes, that's a little weak.
So, wait. So can somebody explain to me, they go and they descend in height, right? Mm-hmm. Is there a center point, that's the highest and they descend outwards, or is it just...
The corner.
Yeah, they go from one corner down to the other corner, the opposite diagonal corner.
So imagine there's a rectangle in front of you.
Right.
So let's just say that we've got we'll just do this north, south, east, and west.
Sure.
Just make it easy so everybody can follow along. So the northwest corner has the tallest stone.
Okay.
The southeast corner
Has the shortest stone.
Okay. So from north to east, they slope down, and from north to south, they slope down. So they make a general gradation in that direction.
What about if we are going to assume this is one big giant thing?
Like there's something still buried under the ground? And
No. I mean, if this is meant to be if all of